Hi friend, welcome to my color and contour card class for June 2021. So here are some of the cards in this month's class. They are beautiful, if I may say so myself, and they're really easy to assemble. If you do not have the stamp set, you can use what you already have at home. There's a couple more cards plus the treat holder in this class, but use what you have. If there's any questions, just pop me an email. But they're very simple, and I think you're going to have a lot of fun making these. I hope you do. So enjoy, relax, take your time, and happy stamping. So if you haven't ordered the color and contour stamp set or dies, this is the stamp set here. And of course the dies. And what I'm loving about the dies is not only do we have dies to cut the flower stamp, which I can show you here. This die cuts out this flower, and then we have this die down here that cuts these out. We have a fun border edge die. I always love that kind of die. So I'm loving these scalloped dies that come with this kit because I am using these for so many other cards and projects. It's going to be a very well used set of dies, I can tell you that. So that's the stamps and dies. Those of you who purchased the kit will have also received a full package of our new paper lattice embellishment. You're only going to need one for a card, so you're going to have a bunch left for other cards. These work really well with the Plentiful Plants. In fact, I think these are part of that Plentiful Plants suite, but they're super versatile as well. You're going to receive a full package of our gilded gems. The other thing that you will have received in your kit are six 6x6 pieces of our beautiful Expressions in Ink Designer Series paper. This paper is stunning. It's all hand painted by the designers at Stampin' Up. The Designer Series paper in your kits is the only thing that I did not pre-cut. And the reason for that is I wanted you to choose which pattern of cardstock you wanted to use for which card, as well as our little treat container we're going to make at the end. So this is the only paper you're going to need to cut for your cards. And this paper coordinates with the Artistically Inked stamp set, which is a fabulous stamp set. Also with coordinating dies, has a great suite. But this paper is so beautiful, I just couldn't resist and had to use it on this month's class. All right. And here are the colors of the ink pads that I have chosen for this month's cards. Now, if you don't have some of these colors, don't worry about that. Just use a color that's similar, or you can change it completely. It's up to you. But these are my suggested colors and the colors that I have used on these cards. So I have Magenta Madness, Pale Papaya. So for instance, if you don't have this new in color, you can use Saffron or Daffodil Delight, for instance. Just Jade, Shaded Spruce, and Crumb Cake. Then we have the Black Memento ink pad, and then I also suggested a blender pen or an aqua painter. So you don't need to use both. You can, or you can use one or the other. Completely up to you. My cards are just a suggestion and a starting point for you. You can copy them completely or tweak them and just make them your own and just have a lot of fun with the kits that I've sent you. If you've just purchased a PDF, which of course this video is part of that tutorial, I hope you have a lot of fun creating these cards at home using the products and supplies that you have. So let's get started with card number 1. So in your kits, all of the card supplies are pre-cut and tucked inside their envelope. So this is what you'll have to make this card. And this card, I cut it to measure 11 by 4 1/4. So I just cut along the center point of the front flap, and that's how I'm doing this fun fold. Really easy. All right, I'm going to grab my liquid glue. You can use any adhesive of your choice. So I'm going to put my Designer Series paper just on the front flap like so. So with photopolymer, I always recommend using our piercing mat because unlike our red rubber stamps, we don't have that extra foam cushion with our photopolymer. So this makes that difference for when you're getting that good impression when you're stamping. All right, so I'm gonna stamp this right on top like this, and I'm just going off, and my stamp's a little bit stained because I've been using them so much. You are going to need some scrap basic white as well, so go ahead and grab a piece of scrap white cardstock. Okay, so here's mine, so I'm going to put this aside. I'm going to stamp this again. Got a lot of beeping going on in the background. I don't know if you can hear that, but I just made a big batch of dog food in my Instant Pot, so it's beeping at me. I cooked up some hamburger earlier in the Instant Pot and then some brown rice, and so this batch is all the vegetables that are going to get put in. And boy, am I glad I have the Instant Pot because it's 33 degrees, so I'm glad I don't have to put the oven on. Okay, so I'm going to grab my pale papaya. Now I'm using this stamp right here. So this is the 2-step stamp, and that's going to color all the flowers for me in one swoop. So just ink that up, line it up. Doesn't have to line up perfectly. It's not meant to line up perfectly. I'm going to bring this in and do that as well. Now I'm going to take my Just Jade and color in the leaves, and I'm going to use my blender pen for that. If you want to, you could, let's see here, you can take a block and dab some ink on there and pick it up with your water painter or even the blender pen as well. So you've got some different options. So I'm just going to go ahead and color this in. And go up the stem. Okay, so this is actually going to get hidden a bit behind this because this is going to be die cut, but I still like to color behind the die cut. I don't know if you can hear Rosie. She just came in panting like crazy. She's been busy chewing a bone. All right. So that's it for the coloring. I'm going to bring in my die cutting machine and cut out the flower. Now I didn't die cut any of the flowers or anything that would have needed to be stamped because we can't stamp anything that's going to be going out in kits. So if you don't have the set of dies but you have the stamp set, then you may want to do some fussy cutting, or you can use a different stamp set altogether. But assuming most of you have this bundle at home, this is the next step. All right, so I'm going to stamp the sentiment, which is so very happy for you. And of course, this can be used for so many different occasions. And I'm just stamping it not too close to the edge, a little bit more towards the center so that I can add my ribbon. Okay, I have bought refills of our snail when it went on sale on the clearance rack. I am completely out of my seal. So that's what I'm using. You use whatever you have. So I'm just wrapping it around and securing it in the back right on top of that adhesive. And then you could use the same tape adhesive or the glue. I like using the double-sided tape when I'm holding down my ribbon, so that's why I didn't use the glue. Let's turn it that way. And then just stick it right on. And then to make my bow, I'm just making 2 little rabbit ears. And then this ear is going to go in front and behind the little ear to my right. It might be different if you're left-handed, I'm guessing. But that's how I'm going to make my bow. And then I just play with it until I get the size of bow that I want. I'm actually going to tuck a glue dot right underneath this ribbon on the front just to hold it down. And then I'm going to take another glue dot and put it right on top of the one I just put down. I'm going to turn my bow kind of on the side a little bit because I don't want to hide all those pretty words, the pretty sentiment. Okay, before I put that on, I'm going to glue this piece of basic white to the inside of my card. And then when you go to put this on the front of your card, we're going to use dimensionals, but I'm only putting a couple dimensionals on this side, the left side. Of course, you don't want to put them on the right side because it will stick to the front of the card. Okay, so I've added my gems. I kind of jumped ahead of myself and didn't have the camera on. And I'm going to take the die cut now and grab a couple more dimensionals and just put them. Actually, I'm going to grab 3, put them behind the flower, and then I'm going to line it up, but I'm also going to stagger it down just a little bit. I'm not going to line it up right exactly on top of that line because it gives it more of that beautiful 3D kind of look. And if you want to, if you got a little bit hanging off the edge, you can just trim that off a little bit. And I'm going to put a tiny little bit of glue on this stem just to kind of hold it down right at the bottom there. So that is a very simple, very pretty card. Now if you have clear Wink of Stella at home, you might want to add some clear Wink of Stella to your flowers and add that little bit of glimmer. But I think that's really pretty, and I hope you guys like that too. And now we're going to move on to the next card. Here is card number 2. This is another beautiful but simple card. Look at the die. I just love these dies, you guys. And this is using our lovely new Pale Papaya ribbon. So let me get everything out. Now for this card, you guys, I did go ahead and cut out a flower die. So assuming you have the stamp set but not the dies, you can stamp it. Or if you don't have this stamp set, just use your blending brush and color it in with your inks or your chalks and add one of the gilded gems to the center, and then you've got a flower that way too. So I just thought that might give you some options, but it also gives you another die cut, and die cuts are always fun. This card comes together really quickly. Okay. So this just gets centered onto that Pale Papaya piece of cardstock. Let me move my base. And I'm going to show you a fun trick. You may not have seen this trick before with ribbon. It was shared years ago by another demonstrator. I couldn't even tell you who it was, but I thought, what a fun trick. So you want to take something like round, something that has a round barrel to it. And depending on how big your barrel is going to be, is going to determine how big your bow or your knot is going to be. And you'll see what I mean in a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm just get everything out of the way so you can see what I'm doing. So I am going to bring this up and literally tie a knot. So I've just wrapped it around once, and now I'm just going to do that second knot. And you want to tie it really tightly. Okay, and I'm going on a diagonal as well. Okay, really tight. Then you're going to have this. Okay, so I'm going to slide that off. And now I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut this on a diagonal. And I should have used my sharper scissors, but I didn't. I have a brand new pair of paper snips, super, super nice and sharp, and I don't know where I put them. So I'm just going to use these scissors, which I also love. Stampin' Up! Used to sell these, are craft and rubber scissors. But you do want sharp scissors when you're cutting your ribbon. Okay, so let me show you how to adhere this to your card layer. I'm just going to take some adhesive, go right across the back. And then I'm going to position this like so. And this little tail goes behind there. And this little tail goes behind there. And all of a sudden, I've got everything done for me. My bow, my strip of ribbon, all from that one tiny little piece. Isn't that like just the coolest way to make a knot? I love that. Love, love, love that. Okay, got those little bits trimmed off. This is gonna go onto my card base. And you can center this, or you can put it a little bit more up to the top or more up to the bottom. There's no right or wrong when you're making your cards. No right or wrong, as long as you're having fun. All right, let's bring in this die cut. And our sentiment is thank you for everything. And I'm again using my Just Jade. I'm going to stamp that right in the center. I'm going to take some dimensionals to put this on the front of my card. With a little bit of cat fur that inevitably gets everywhere. All right, so I'm going to put this down a little bit because I like to show variations of what you can do with your cards. On my original, I put this up a little bit. So on this one, I'm going to put it down a little bit and see what happens. So ordinarily, I would stamp before I die cut. However, as I mentioned, I wanted to include an extra die cut for everybody who may not have this at home. So I'm going to ink this with Pale Papaya. And try my best to line this up. And again, this stamp doesn't line up perfectly. But that looks pretty good. I'm going to come in with my outline stamp now and line this up. And there we go. So these don't line up perfectly, but I am going to show you kind of what I've been doing. When I first got this set, I was kind of thinking, how does this line up? And I'm thinking they would have this going the right direction, you know, having them side by side. So I've been lining up this wider piece here with this piece that kind of has that little bit of a bump on the bottom. And that seems to be working pretty well for me. So that's what I've been doing, and that's what I tried to do there, and it worked out pretty good. So let's bring in my glue. I'm going to add a little bit of glue right there. And I'm going to use a dimensional right there. And then just position this onto your card. Perfect. And to finish it, another one of our beautiful gilded gems. I'm going to use one of the bigger ones. And of course, you can add your own, you know, cardstock or computer paper to the inside of the card, whatever you like. And the reason too why I didn't, I mean, you could center this onto this panel. The reason why I didn't is because I purposely wanted more of that patterned paper to show on the front of the card. So, but you can put your piece wherever you want. Let me show you the original. So very simple, pretty cards. Now we're moving on to card number 3. So here is card number 3. And here's my package of goodies. And look at this, guys. Isn't that absolutely beautiful? Let me put it on the white. Like, oh my goodness, what a great die. I just love this. This card is another super fast, easy card to put together. I love this card layout though. I can't wait to use these dies with our Christmas papers and our Christmas stamps. Oh my gosh. It's gonna be awesome. And I got a little piece of paper. There we go. Okay. And then add my designer series paper. I think this might be my favorite pattern of all the patterns. I'm not real sure. I like them all. They're so pretty, all of them. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stamp my sentiment. The sentiment on this one is, "You are amazing." And I got the little piece of basic white and my magenta madness. And I'm just lining up the top of my stamp with the top of my cardstock. So it may cut out like a little tiny bit of that G on the bottom, but that's fine. And the reason why is because when you put your gold ribbon on, it's going to kind of hide that little bit of that missing G. Or you can make this a little bit bigger. The reason why I cut it that way is because this is the exact size that fits inside of this, this label die. So that goes on like so. And then this goes onto the card with Stampin' Dimensionals. On my original card, I have this going portrait. For this card, I'm going to have it going landscape. This way you get to see what it looks like before you put your card together maybe. But then you can decide what you like best. Okay, I'm going to tie a bow. They're beautiful gold twine. Something you may want to consider stocking up on now before everybody starts making Christmas cards. A lot of people make cards in July, Christmas in July classes. I myself am planning on having one. So I'm just going to put my glue dot right there. And then just put that on. And then to finish that, we need some gilded gems. I'll put one down here. There's card number 3 finished. And let me show you the first one I made. And again, the only difference is one's portrait and one is landscape. That designer series paper is so beautiful. It does all the artwork for you, doesn't it? It's just gorgeous. All right, so I have taken the Shaded Spruce card base for those of you who have kits, and I've already run your front layer through our painted texture embossing folder. And then I am going to take my pattern paper. And again, you could use whatever pattern you want on your cards. And put that there. So this will be flush along the top and the bottom. So you're just leaving a little bit of white on the sides. And this gets put onto the side of my card, just like so. All right, time to decorate the label. So I did some gold embossing on here, and you are also going to need your scrap white paper again. So I'm going to bring this in, and I'm going to ink this with my Versamark. I forgot to mention, you're going to need a Versamarking pad if you plan on doing heat embossing. Okay. And then bring this piece in. We're going to come back to that one in a second. I'm going to stamp with Shaded Spruce this time. So I'm going to stamp here for you now. And then, and in Better Days Ahead, I'm going to stamp that right below it. I kind of lined up the Y in between the R and the D for Better Days. Just kind of has that nice little dip in there, fits in there nice. Even though that's a tiny bit crooked, that's all right. So now I'm going to bring in my splatter stamp. And I'm going to add some splatters here and there, because these are going to be embossed in gold. Okay, so we have all our stamping and first and marking done. Time to put on the gold powder. Now, if you don't have gold, you can just stamp your flower in black or whatever color you want and color it accordingly. And you can stamp the splatters with crumb cake, and that would look really pretty as well. Okay, get off the excess, bring this guy in. Okay. I'm gonna zap this with my heat tool. To color this, I'm pulling in my pale papaya. And I'm just gonna dab a little bit onto this block. And the reason why I'm dabbing it onto the block is just because the style of the ink pads that we have now, it's not as easy as our old pads were, where we could squeeze and get a puddle of ink on the top. So I just find it a lot easier with these style of ink pads just to tap it right onto a clear block or something like that. And then it could be a styrofoam plate, but then you can just pick up your color however you like. So you could use the blender pen as we did on the first card, but I'm going to use our water painter. Make sure I have water coming out and get a piece of paper towel. Now, if you've not seen our water painters before, these just unscrew and you just put your water in and just screw it back on, and then you just squeeze the barrel, and then that will bring the water out to the tip. So I love it. I love using our water painters. So I'm going to start with the pale papaya, squeezing a little bit more water, and then I'm just going to go right inside the flowers. And I'm being liberal with the water. I'm really making sure there's quite a bit of water, even though this is not watercolor cardstock, because I'm going to want my Magenta Madness to blend into these flowers when I add it next. Okay, so I'm going to do that now. So I'm picking up the Magenta Madness, and watch, when I tap it down, it's going to just blend into that pale papaya. So I'm going to add some more water to this one because some of those are dried. So you'll see what I mean here. There we go. And it's just going to add a nice two-tone look to these flowers. So I'm going to add some more pale papaya here just to add some darker shading of it. And I want some Magenta Madness over there, so I'm going to dab a little bit in there. You see how that ink just spreads? It's such a pretty technique. Now you don't have to do that if you don't want to do that. But the embossing keeps your ink within the lines of those flowers too. Oh, and I forgot one up there, so I'll have to do that as well. And I'm just going to add a little bit of green along the stems. Okay, let's go back and do this one. So I'm going to add some water, pick up some pale papaya, dab it, and then dab a little bit of that Magenta Madness. So I'm going to set that aside to dry, and then I'm going to cut it with my die. Okay, so I'm going to bring this in and use Stampin' Dimensionals to put this onto the front of your card. You guys having fun yet? I hope you guys are having fun. I know I'm having fun. I always have fun when I'm stamping. Some of you may know this, some of you may not, but I've been with Stampin' Up! For 19 years. I signed up when they very first came to Canada in 2002. And I was just, well, not just, but I was a hobby demonstrator for years because I worked for the airlines, which I loved, 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 loved that. And it wasn't until about 8 years after I joined that I decided to turn this hobby into a little bit more of a business, because I was no longer at the airlines. And when you're working 12-hour days, plus it was a job that I loved, I really didn't have time to do another business. Alrighty, here's my die cut. You guys, I think that is so pretty. I just think that's so pretty with the gold and the different colors. Okay, I'm gonna put this on my card. So I'm gonna use glue. You can use Stampin' Dimensionals. You can do a little bit of both. Why don't we do a little bit of both on this card? So I'm adding a little bit of glue on the bottom half of my flower. I'm going to stick one dimensional right there. And so the glue is going to glue this right on to my label, and then the dimensional is going on to the card base. And somewhere, here we go, I have my little bow, and I've already got a glue dot behind it, so I'm going to stick that on. And I need a gem, and I'm going to put that right in the center of my bow. And again, I'll just add my paper cardstock inside there later, and you guys can do the same. So here is the original first card I made, and you can see that my designer series paper has more gold and more of a pattern than this strip does, but that's still okay. It's still beautiful, and it's got that little bit of gold in it, so it pulls in that gold embossing really nicely. But again, if you don't have embossing paraphernalia, go ahead and stamp this in black or whatever color you want and color it in and stamp these in your crumb cake. Card number 5 uses the paper lattice, and what I have done is I've actually gone through and I've already die cut it for you. I wanted you to have the scalloped edges like I have here, and you guys, I didn't even have to glue this onto my cardstock, because when I ran it through the die, all these little perforations and everything around the die it's kind of like pushed the lattice into the cardstock, if you will. So it's pretty secure onto that cardstock. So there was no glue needed there. So I've already gone ahead and done that for you. Okay, so I'm just going to glue my designer series paper onto my card base. I've got my crumb cake ink pad now, and I'm going to go around the edge of my die cut just to finish it off. And it'll really stand out against my card base a lot better. Let me just show you. I'll just do half, and then I'll show you here. I'll do half on the top and half on the bottom and on the side, and you'll see what I mean. You see how that stands out more against that background versus just leaving it white, which you absolutely could, but you can see the difference. So that's up to you when you're making your card, but that's what I'm going to do. You can use a sponge as well. You could use our blending brushes. I'm just doing my ink pad directly to the cardstock. Okay, and this gets glued to the front. And then we have our label for the sentiment. I'm going to stamp You're Amazing again, also using the Magenta Madness. Because who doesn't like getting a card or an envelope that has You're Amazing on it? Like, what a nice way to make somebody's day, telling them that they're amazing. Okay, and I can see I've got some little dots I'm gonna have to poke out of that. Oh, and I missed a step, you guys. I missed a step. I forgot to add my ribbon. What I meant to do is take my ribbon and wrap it around and tuck it behind the back, right? Forgot to do that. So I'm just gonna measure this here. I am gonna take a glue dot. Let's see how this works. Take a glue dot and put it behind here and just flip it under and hold it down. Perfect. So put your ribbon on before you glue this piece on. Don't do as I do. Ay, ay, ay. I'm gonna put this behind the paper now. Pull this down and tuck it under. There. Might be a little bit too tight. There we go. I'm bringing some Stampin' Dimensionals to put my label on. And I'm going to put that right here. So I'm going past this edge right here. So I'm just going outside of it a little bit. Okay, I'm going to put my ribbon on. I'm going to put my ribbon right here. And sometimes you might need to add extra glue dots to hold these ends down when they're not behaving. See? Now it's doing what I want it to. I do the same thing over here. Just stick one under there and push it right down. And then my bow stays exactly where I want it to. All right, time to stamp and add some flowers. So now I'm just stamping my flowers. So I've gone ahead and stamped the solid image with Pale Papaya, and now I've inked the outline image also with Pale Papaya. I didn't go ahead and clean my stamp first because I'm going into a darker ink pad. Okay, and I'm going to cut those out with the dies. I'm going to take my glue, add a little bit behind this guy, and I'm going to stick them right there. And then this one, I'm going to use a dimensional. I'm going to put a couple. And I just want this to overlap on the tag a little bit as well as this flower, just like so. Those of you who received kits, in this envelope of supplies, you will have a scrap piece of Designer Series paper like this. And that's because you're going to cut out these leaves to tuck behind those flowers. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Cut right around. Okay. And you don't have to be precise. I am cutting quite close though. Okay, there's one. It's okay to change up the shapes a little bit. And I'm actually going to leave this little bit on because that's going to get glued behind the flower. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a little bit of glue behind this bit. And take your pick tool. Oops, let's get this little bit of paper off. And I'm going to lift this up and just tuck this behind it. So now I have my little leaves peeking behind my flower. Isn't that a fun way of using our paper? Do the same thing here. And then my third leaf, I'll decide where I want to put that one. Not sure if I want it here or down there. I think I want it up on the top. And of course, you could just take the reverse side and cut the shape of a leaf as well. Doesn't look like much of a leaf, but it is. And then all we need to do, my friends, is add some more gold bling to the center of these flowers. And I'm using the larger gems. So my first card has the pale papaya ribbon on it. And then this one has the polished pink. And I think they both look really nice. But isn't that fun with that lattice behind there too? I love this card design. I hope you guys like it too. You can also see on this card, I went a little bit lighter around the edges with the ink. Whereas this card, I went a little bit darker. They both look nice, but you do get a different look. So now it's time to do the last card. So here's the last card, card number 6. So this card's a little bit different, and I'm going to show you how I made that butterfly, or maybe you already figured it out. So I have my Magenta Madness for my card base, and then I have my basic white, and I have cut this with the beautiful scallop die that's included in the dies. And I'm going to bring in my flowers. Let me see. All right, I'm going to start with my pale papaya. And we're just going to stamp sort of along the edge here, but I'm going to start up at the top and then over here, and I'm turning my stamp around a little bit just so the petals are kind of going in different directions. And just so you know, these wash really well. So any ink that I get on this mat, I can just go and wash it right underneath the tap. Now I need to do my outline stamp. And I'm not going to be fussy. I'm just going to randomly stamp it on top. Okay. Now I'm going to go into my Magenta Madness. And again, I'm not going to clean my stamp because I'm going from a lighter color to a dark color. So I'm going to stamp some petals there. And I'm overlapping a little bit. And that's probably good. I don't think I need any more. I'm working in multiple, you want to work in odd numbers when you're stamping. So I have 5 flowers, and that's just nicer visually. So now I need my my outline. I'm stamping that on top. And while I have my ink pads out, I'm going to bring in my blender pen. Make sure it's clean. And I'm going to pick up the pale papaya, and I'm going to color in the center of the pink flowers. And then go into my Magenta Madness and do the same thing. Whoops, that's pretty dark. I didn't want it to be that dark. I should have brushed some of it off first. That's all right. Because I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do next. I'm going to take my black, and this is what I meant to do in the first place. I didn't mean to do my outline with the same color. I forgot I'm using black. So this is going to work just fine, but you're going to see it's going to add the detail. Turning it around a little bit, and then it's going to really pop out the center of those flowers. See? Perfect. Now I have some Just Jade ribbon again. So I'm just going to flip this over here so I don't get any ink on my card. Add a little bit of adhesive just so I can hold down the end. So I'm going to go right down over here. Not quite in the center and closer towards that scallop edge. And then this will go on my card base. I have to tell you guys, it's a very hot day. And as much as I love the sun, I'm glad I'm inside where it's nice and cool and spending time stamping with you, even though we're not technically in person together. It's still nice knowing that I'm going to be sharing these cards with you, and hopefully you're enjoying these videos. I'm just sticking a little glue dot underneath just to hold that down. Now I'm just going to make a knot. You can make a bow. I'm just going to make just a simple knot. Cut off the ends. Okay, set that aside. Then I have a piece of basic black, and I've already gone ahead and cut this with the die, of course. Let's move this out of the way. And I'm just going to put this onto the front of my card. I'm going to put it right about here. And I'm just making sure it's kind of even on each side, more or less. There we go. Now I have a piece of basic white, and this measures 2 3/4 by 1.5. I'm going to take my Just Jade, which of course is the same color as my ribbon. I'm going to ink this up, and I'm going to ink it on the side, which I don't often tilt my sentiments. But I think this looks really nice tilted on the card. And put that on. And now for the butterfly. So on my original card, I used just a scrap piece of my paper. I'm going to use a different pattern for this one. So this is a technique, and you do need the silicone craft mat for this. And if you don't have a silicone craft mat, then maybe you have a different butterfly punch that you can use. So I am using this stamp right here to make the butterfly. So I'm going to stamp this down with the black memento onto my silicone craft mat. Then I'm going to bring in my designer series paper. I'm going to flip this around, put it on the paper, and just press down. Just kind of give it a good little rub. You want to do this step first because it'll be easier to line up the second set of wings after you've done that. Okay. Oops, we don't want green. We want black. Let's stamp it in the black. And now you can see I'm going to line it up. So there's my butterfly, my crazy looking butterfly. But I had to try it because I thought that could be fun. So that's what we're doing on this card. Again, you can use a punch or a die. So I'm going to take my blender pen and dip it into that Magenta Madness just because I want to pull in a little bit of pink. Just going around the top. That came out a bit darker, so we're going to have to go back over here. And I'm just going to go along the body a bit. And just down a little. I'm going to clean that off. Go back and forth until it comes out clean. Okay, now that this is clean, I'm going into my pale papaya, and I'm just going to add a little bit of that in here as well, because I want to keep some of that green in there. I don't want to hide it completely. So again, kind of adding some down here just to kind of make the body. This is what I've got so far. Now I'm going to take my clear Wink of Stella, and I'm just going to go over that stamped image. I'm going to go down just to add some sparkle. Make sure you get the black lines as well so that they shimmer and glimmer also. And then I'm just going to fussy cut this out. So I'm just going to start on this side and cut, and I'm kind of, you can go as much You can go in as much or as little as you want. And this really isn't that difficult to cut out. And I love fussy cutting. I find it super relaxing. Not everybody does. So again, you can use your own punch or a die if you have it. Or you can just stamp a flower and put a flower instead of a butterfly. But I thought this would be fun to try. And I thought, you know, it turned out not too bad. This could also make a pretty little bow if you were making a little package, like one of our little pizza boxes, and you were wrapping a ribbon around it. You could even use this as a stamped bow. Why not? I love looking at my stamps and seeing different ways that I can utilize them. And then you're just getting that much more mileage out of your stamps. Almost done. I'm also moving the paper, not just my scissors, and I find that that's secret key when you're fussy cutting like this. There. What do you think? It's a butterfly. Well, it is for this card. So I'm just going to bend it up. I'm pushing it in half, really, and then bending those leaves over. The wings, not the leaves. The wings. Okay, so I'm going to bring that in. I'm going to pick up a glue dot and stick it right there. Oh no, before I put that on, I want to draw my antenna. So just use your fine tip black marker. I'm just using one of our old journaling pens. So you've got your antennas. And then put this on. And then the other thing I like to do is I like to take our mini dimensionals. If I can get the backing off. I'm going to lift this up. And I'm going to hold up this wing and press down on the tip onto that dimensional. And then that gives me the shape of my butterfly wings that I want. We have a lilac tree in our front yard that is absolutely sensational, and the smell of the flowers is actually coming into my craft room. I love it. Pick up one of our small gems and put it right in the middle of the butterfly. What do you think about that? It's kind of different, hey? But I wanted to share it with you because it's just something to consider that you can do, and you don't have to add the ink. You can just use the designer series paper for your butterfly, or you can do something altogether different. Here's the one I did where I stamped it on yellow designer series paper and added it. So I just thought that was fun. So I wanted to share that with you, and that was card number 6. Now it's time to make this super cute little treat holder. So this is an adorable little box that you won't believe how easy this is to make from one 6x6 piece of designer series paper. So I'm going to score it. I'm going to work on this side so it might be easier for you to see the lines, but you're going to score at the 1/2 inch mark and 5.5. Next, you're going to spin this around 90 degrees, and you're going to score it at 1 3/4 and 2 1/4 at 4 and 4.5, and that is it for your scoring. So I'm just going to fold up on these lines so that you can hopefully see a little bit better what I'm doing here. All right. Okay. So you can kind of see we've got the little edges going on. See how that's going to go? You can fit a little chocolate bar in there. Now, when you open this and look at it, you have one side that's a little more narrow than the other. The shorter side, the more narrow side, This is a little bit wider over here. This is a little bit thinner. You're going to put your die on like so and run that through your machine. So this die is just a little bit shy of 6 inches across. So you just need to snip off a tiny little bit on each end. There. Now we have our beautiful border edge. And what we want to do now is we want to cut where you've got your little 1/2 inch spaces up here. You want to just go in and cut. Just like that. You're just making a little tab. Okay, so you're just going up to that crease line. So you're going to do that both sides. And down here. Okay. Actually, up here, we're going to cut these 2 tabs right off. So the end that you've got your border scallop, we are going to cut this tab completely off. So I'm just going to go right down and cut those off. Okay. Cut those off. And then these little tabs, if you want, you can just ever so slightly take off a little sliver on a diagonal. Just makes it, it makes a nicer edge for gluing. That's it. That's all there is to it. So I really want this to be the front of my treat box. So I'm going to go this way. And now it's just a matter of gluing it together. I just think this box is the cutest darn little treat holder ever. So what I'm going to do is on these 2 tiny little flaps here, I'm going to add a little bit of glue. And then I'm going to bring up this edge, hold it down just for a second, and this edge. Okay. Make sure you've got those lined up nicely. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put glue along these 2 tabs and glue them along each edge. So just fold that up and wrap that around. Like, oh my goodness, how easy is that, you guys? And think of all the goodies you can put inside of these. So just give that glue a second to do its thing. I'm going to take your pick tool and just kind of give that a little rub on the inside there. So then when you fold it over, you have this super sweet little treat box. I just love this. All right, it's time to stamp another flower. So I'm going to stamp the outline first, and I'm going to stamp this flower in the Magenta Madness. Okay, now I'm going to take my Pill Papaya and my blending pen and color in the center. I'm going to add a little bit like that as well. So you see the die lines up with that perfectly, and I'm just going to run it through my machine. So I've just cut my basic white cardstock with this little die from our die collection. Now I'm taking this So Very Happy For You stamp, and I'm going to take my shaded spruce marker. Now you can use any color marker, and I am just coloring on the words for you. So I'm omitting the rest of the sentiment. Okay, and then stamp that down. Now I'm putting a mini dimensional on the bottom edge of this petal, because that's going to go on this side, which is going to keep this flap closed. And I'm going to take some of our beautiful gold twine, and I'm just going to Probably should have done this before I glued it down, but I forgot. Just going to put it right through this hole, and then I'm just going to wrap these ends around into a little knot. I know it's probably hard to see what I'm doing, but I'm just making a little loop, and then these two ends are going through that loop. So that just adds a pretty little bit of gold onto the box, and then that's ready to be filled with treats. So you can put anything in it. You can put in a little bit of chocolate, and there you go. Isn't that great? I love this little box so much. You could put so much in it.